At exactly 4:23 a.m., on a moonless night in the Strait of Hormuz, the USS Paul Hamilton picked up something that sent every alarm in the Combat Information Center into motion. 18 contacts were rising out of Iranian airspace. This was not a drill, and it was not a mistake. It was a coordinated strike package built to overwhelm a single Arleigh Burke-class destroyer through sheer volume. 6 modern anti-ship cruise missiles were racing just above the waves at an altitude of only 5 meters. 4 Khalij Fars ballistic missiles were climbing toward terminal phase at roughly Mach 3. 8 Shahed 136 loitering munitions were approaching in a swarm from multiple launch points. Iran had just launched its most ambitious naval strike since the Falklands War. The assumption was simple: enough weapons in the air could overpower advanced defense systems. What came next would show how modern naval combat really works. The Paul Hamilton is not just a ship of steel and sailors, it is a 9,200-ton part of one of the most advanced combat networks ever deployed at sea. Its SPY-1D radar does not scan one contact at a time like older rotating systems. With 4 fixed phased array faces, it watches all 360 degrees at once, tracking more than 100 targets while calculating firing solutions and ranking threats in real time. The moment those 18 Iranian weapons launched, the SPY-1D identified them within 8 seconds. Range, speed, trajectory, threat level, everything was sorted almost instantly. The destroyer's Aegis combat system did not hesitate. It processed, and the result was clear. The incoming strike had entered a defensive zone far more advanced than its planners likely expected. Inside the Combat Direction Center, dim blue light washed over rows of operators focused on their displays. There was no panic, no confusion, only the steady precision of sailors who had rehearsed this kind of moment so many times that instinct had taken over. The tactical action officer marked each threat on the main screen. 6 sea-skimming cruise missiles were 70 kilometers out, closing at around 1,100 kilometers per hour. 4 ballistic missiles were still in boost phase, climbing toward apogee before their final dive. 8 drones were approaching from multiple directions at about 150 kilometers per hour. Standard doctrine is clear: engage at maximum range, layer the defense, and never allow threats to get close enough for last-ditch systems unless there is no other option. Then the order came, calm and exact: weapons free. Engage ballistic missiles first. The Khalij Fars represents Iran's effort to challenge American naval superiority. It is a Fateh-based ballistic missile modified with an optical seeker for terminal guidance, carrying a 650-kilogram warhead with a range of 300 kilometers and a terminal speed of around Mach 3. On paper, it appears formidable. In practice, it was following a ballistic path against a destroyer equipped specifically to intercept that kind of threat. At 4:24 a.m., the first SM-6 launched from the forward Mk-41 vertical launch system. There was no dramatic plume, just the sudden release of a 1,500-kilogram missile accelerated upward at extreme speed. 3 seconds later, a second followed. Then a third. 4 missiles were launched in just 12 seconds, each assigned to a specific Khalij Fars as the incoming weapons climbed toward their apex roughly 40 kilometers overhead. What makes the SM-6 so effective is the way it combines several proven technologies. It uses the aerodynamic body of the SM-2, the dual-thrust rocket motor approach of the SM-3, and an active radar seeker derived from the AIM-120AMRAAM. The result is a missile capable of intercepting targets from sea level to near space altitudes, with a maximum range of 370 kilometers and speeds beyond Mach 3. Unlike older interceptors that depend on constant radar illumination from the ship, the SM-6 has an active seeker, giving it true fire-and-forget capability. That means the destroyer can launch multiple interceptors at once, while each missile receives networked updates and then tracks its own target in the final stage. It is the difference between handling threats one at a time and responding to many at once from multiple directions. At 35 kilometers altitude, the first SM-6 locked onto the lead Khalij Fars. The Iranian missile was still climbing, moving at nearly 1,000 meters per second. Its optical seeker was not scheduled to activate for another 60 seconds during terminal descent. It never reached that stage. The SM-6's 64-kilogram blast fragmentation warhead detonated just 3 meters from the Khalij Fars missile's fuselage. There was no giant cinematic explosion, just a violent burst of tungsten fragments ripping outward at roughly 2,000 meters per second. In an instant, the ballistic missile broke apart into spinning debris. It took only 38 seconds for 4 SM-6s to remove all 4 ballistic threats. Every intercept happened above 30 kilometers in the darkness before dawn. And while that was happening, the Paul Hamilton was still tracking the cruise missiles, the incoming drones, and maintaining normal combat operations. Iran's most advanced weapons were taken out before their crews likely understood what had happened. Around $18 million worth of SM-6 interceptors had erased the most dangerous part of the attack, but 6 Nor cruise missiles were still on the way, skimming just above the water. At 4:26 a.m., the tactical picture shifted again. The 6 incoming missiles were now 45 kilometers out, still flying so low that they sat beneath the destroyer's radar horizon and remained hidden from many shipboard sensors. But far above the battle, nearly 200 kilometers away, an E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft was circling overhead. Its APY-9 radar had a view from above sharp enough to pick out low-flying cruise missiles at long range. The Hawkeye detected the Nors about 90 seconds before the destroyer's own radar could. Using cooperative engagement capability, that tracking data was passed instantly to the Paul Hamilton through a secure data link. This is one of the biggest changes in modern naval warfare. The ship does not have to see the threat first. It only has to be connected to a network that sees it. The E-2D provides the eyes over the horizon, the destroyer provides the firepower, and the attackers become targets the moment they enter that system. The Nor missile is one of Iran's main anti-ship weapons, based on the Chinese C-802 design. It is powered by a turbojet, carries a 165-kilogram semi-armor-piercing warhead, and can reach out to roughly 170 kilometers. It cruises at around Mach 0.9 and stays low over the sea, typically 20 to 30 meters above the surface, before dropping even lower in the final phase, down to around 5 to 7 meters. That profile is designed to exploit radar limits and stay hidden until the last moment. Against older defenses, that approach made sense. Against a ship like the Paul Hamilton, plugged into a networked sensor grid, it was a losing play from the start. 6 SM-2 Block 4 missiles launched in quick succession. These were built for taking down cruise missiles, smaller and less expensive than the SM-6, but still more than capable. Each missile climbed to around 8,000 meters, rolled into a shallow dive, and accelerated toward intercept points calculated by the Aegis system. The Nors never had a chance to react. The SM-2S came from above and behind, guided by continuous updates from the SPY-1D radar. The first intercept happened at 28 kilometers. The SM-2's proximity fuse triggered, and its fragmentation warhead tore through the cruise missile. The aluminum airframe collapsed, the turbojet swallowed fragments and failed, and the Nor plunged into the sea trailing smoke and burning fuel. 5 remained. The surviving missiles scattered, attempting standard evasive behavior and breaking formation to force more complicated engagements. But Aegis does not care about formation changes. It calculates probability of kill, assigns weapons, and keeps working. 5 more SM-2s launched, 5 more intercepts followed. The last Nor was destroyed 19 kilometers from the Paul Hamilton. From the first ballistic missile intercept to the final cruise missile kill, only 3 minutes and 47 seconds had passed. Iran had committed 10 precision weapons worth roughly $15 million, not including launch platforms, crews, and training. The Paul Hamilton answered with 10 interceptors costing about $30 million in total, and achieved a complete defensive success. No damage, no injuries, no breakthrough. On paper, that exchange already looked brutally one-sided, but one final layer of the attack was still coming in. The cheapest, slowest, and in some ways most troublesome part of the package. 8 Shahed 136 loitering munitions were still inbound. These were not missiles in the usual sense, but propeller-driven strike drones, about 2.5 meters long with a 3-meter wingspan. Powered by a piston engine, they make the harsh buzzing sound that gave them their nickname, flying mopeds. With a reach of up to 1,500 kilometers, basic GPS guidance, and inertial backup navigation, the Shahed 136 looks simple on paper. Its warhead is estimated at around 40 to 50 kilograms, and its price is what makes it especially attractive, roughly $20,000 to $80,000 per unit. That low cost is the real advantage. For the price of a single Nor missile, dozens of Shaheds can be launched, forcing an opponent to spend far more on defense than the drones cost to produce. That is the logic of asymmetric warfare through cost pressure. And that idea works, until it meets a warship that does not rely only on top-tier interceptors to deal with slower aerial threats. At 4:31 a.m., the Shahed group closed in from 3 different directions. 4 approached from the northeast, 2 from the east, and 2 from the southeast. Time to arrive together and put pressure on close-range defenses. Their maximum speed was only about 150 kilometers per hour, roughly in the range of a light training aircraft. To the SPY-1D radar, they were easy to follow. They appeared more like slow helicopters than serious penetration threats. No stealth, no electronic attack, no sharp maneuvering, just preloaded coordinates and a plan. The Paul Hamilton's electronic warfare team briefly considered interfering with their navigation signals, but the decision was made that direct engagement would be faster and cleaner. That brought the RIM-162 ESSM into play, the middle layer of the ship's air defense system. The evolved Sea Sparrow missile offers a range of about 50 kilometers, speeds above Mach 2, and high maneuverability with semi-active radar homing supported by mid-course data link updates. One of its biggest advantages is density. 4 ESSMs can fit inside a single Mark 41 launch cell, while larger missiles take up an entire cell each. That means a ship can carry a much deeper magazine for handling high-volume threats. At around $1.7 million per missile, ESSM sits in an awkward space, less costly than larger interceptors, but still expensive when used against low-cost drones. Even so, doctrine remained unchanged. Every threat is dealt with as far out as possible. 8 ESSMs launched in 4 pairs, each pair assigned to a drone grouping. Within 5 seconds, the missiles were already beyond Mach 2. Guided by fire control radar illumination, they closed fast. At 18 kilometers, the first ESSM detonated its 45-kilogram warhead. A cloud of tungsten fragments tore through the air, taking out 2 Shaheds at once. Their lightweight frames could not survive the blast and fragmentation. Wreckage scattered across the water below. 3 more paired intercepts followed at 14 kilometers, 11 kilometers, and 8 kilometers. The final 2 drones were brought down at 6 kilometers, close enough for lookouts on the bridge to catch the flash through binoculars, but still nowhere near close enough to matter. Then came silence. The tactical display cleared. In every direction, the water was empty again. All 18 incoming threats had become splashes. The strike that was supposed to overload American defenses through sheer numbers had lasted less than 8 minutes from first detection to final intercept. Not one weapon closed to within 5 kilometers of the destroyer. Not one sailor needed medical attention. The Paul Hamilton stayed on patrol at 18 knots, steady and unchanged, as though defeating a coordinated missile and drone wave was simply another item on the checklist. The financial comparison makes the outcome even more striking. Iran's 6 Noor cruise missiles, at about $1.5 million each, came to roughly $9 million. 4 Kalashnikov's ballistic missiles at around $2 million each added another $8 million. 8 Shahed 136 drones, estimated at about $50,000 apiece, added roughly $400,000. That brings the direct cost of the attack to around $17.4 million. Once radar sites, launch vehicles, command systems, and years of training are included, the full figure likely rises closer to $25 million. The U.S. response was far more expensive in raw missile cost. 4 SM-6 interceptors at $4.5 million each totaled $18 million. 6 SM 2 Block 4 missiles at $2 million each added $12 million. 8 ESSMs at $1.7 million each added another $13.6 million. Altogether, the American side spent about $43.6 million, and that is the harsh truth of modern naval defense. The defender often pays more per shot, but if the shield holds perfectly and the ship stays in the fight, the mission is still a clear success. That sounds costly until you look at what was being defended. A $2.1 billion destroyer, a crew of 323 sailors, freedom of navigation through one of the world's most important energy choke points, and the wider credibility of U.S. naval power that discourages future attacks on a larger scale. But the bigger price was not measured in dollars. It was strategic. Within 12 hours, intelligence services across the region would have been studying every second of the encounter. Iran's most advanced systems had been intercepted with remarkable efficiency. Every radar emission could be examined, every flight path could be reviewed, every limitation could be identified and stored for future analysis. In effect, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had handed U.S. naval intelligence a detailed look at how it might try to threaten the Strait of Hormuz in a real crisis, and paid heavily for that lesson. In Tehran, military planners would have faced a difficult calculation. The destroyer they targeted carried 96 vertical launch cells. It had used 18 to stop 18 incoming weapons, leaving 78 still available, all tied into a broader network of E-2D aircraft, satellites, and shore-based support. To empty the magazine of just one destroyer would require repeated salvos well above 100 weapons. To seriously challenge an entire carrier strike group would demand a scale of fire that Iran's inventory would struggle to maintain. And that assumes every launch site stays intact long enough to keep firing, something far from guaranteed once retaliation begins from Tomahawk strikes, carrier aircraft, and long-range bombers. That is modern naval warfare in its most stripped-down form, not simply courage, not just positioning, and not home field advantage. It comes down to sensor fusion, networked operations, and the ability to engage threats faster than an attacker can build pressure. Iran bet that mass would overpower sophistication. That bet failed because sophistication now means radar coverage beyond the horizon, interceptors that can engage long before visual contact, and combat systems solving the entire problem in seconds while the crew stays calm and focused. Iran brought a Cold War-style concept supported by newer hardware. The United States brought a combat network that turns individual ships into connected nodes, where one platform can fire using targeting data from another platform far away, guided by an aircraft the other side may never even detect. That is the real lesson here. In modern naval combat, the side with the stronger network often shapes the outcome before the first incoming weapon gets close. If this breakdown was useful, consider subscribing and sharing the video. The math behind modern military operations often explains far more than the headlines ever do.